2 weeks after my 30th birthday, I collapsed at work. I was working as a primary school teacher, and I had this sensation that I was floating outside of my body, looking in. I couldn't feel my legs or talk, and my colleagues were worried enough about me to call an ambulance. I was rushed to the hospital with blue lights and sirens, and I could see in the reflection of the ambulance that the whole of my side of my face had drooped. And I thought to myself, I'm 30 years old and I'm having a stroke. All of that night at the hospital, I had the very best of care, doctors coming and going. My family were summoned. We were all prepared for the worst. There was talks of stroke, tumour, major neurological events. And by the time the morning came, I was having seizures. I spent a number of weeks in the hospital. I had gold standard care and lots of investigations. And at the end, I was approached by the doctor with the answer at last. And that answer was, we can't find anything wrong. It was explained to me that these symptoms were functional, meaning there was nothing wrong with my physical body, so the tissues, the bones, the organs, but there was something going wrong with the way that my brain and my body were communicating. So the hardware was fine, problem with the software. This sounded like great news. Okay, tell me what to do about it. But I very quickly realised that there was no treatment pathway out of this. And not only that, the care that I received in the hospital changed in that moment. Suddenly I was seen as a time waster, or like I was making things up. My symptoms were real, and my symptoms were not my fault, but I had absolutely no idea what was going on in my body. So I went home, and I did a very human thing. I tried to find the answer. I'd been told that these symptoms were caused often by trauma, by suppressed emotion, by stress. But I didn't really see myself as a stressed person at all. It felt like a way of dismissing me. And so I thought there must be something physical going on. These symptoms are so awful, and I'm going to find the answer. So I went on a kind of safari through the medical system. I spent 8 years bouncing around between hospitals, doctors, collecting specialists, looking for the answer. But I kept hearing the message, there's nothing wrong with your physical body. The message I was hearing was so unusual and different from what I was actually experiencing in my body. And the worst thing was, I'd always thought when something goes wrong in your body, you go to the doctor and the doctor fixes it for you. If the doctor can't fix it, how on earth am I going to get better? But I did get better because I'm here, I'm well, I'm happy, terrified. So what happened? And what happened was someone I knew recovered completely from 25 years of chronic pain. 25 years. And it turned my head. This was my friend Fiona. And I knew how much these symptoms had affected Fiona's life, so I paid attention. And Fiona managed to do something that the doctors had never achieved. She helped me to understand chronic pain. And I'd always thought of chronic pain being generated by the tissues of the body. So you break your leg generates pain. But that's not actually how pain works. And I learned that pain is actually generated by the brain as a signal when it experiences stress or threat. So it's a danger alarm signal. So for example, I break my leg, my brain generates pain to let me know there's a problem. The leg is broken, don't walk on it. Without pain, as a species, we wouldn't still be here. If I put my hand in a fire, I experience pain in my hand, that pain is generated by my brain as a signal. Get your hand out of the fire. So pain isn't the problem. It's actually pointing us towards the problem. And it's an intelligent response from a system that's wired for our survival. I also learned that that pain signal can be switched on even when there's no physical threat. So I'm not in physical danger right now, and yet my heart's pounding, my hands are shaking, my mouth's dry. My brain is perceiving an emotional threat. I'm emotionally stressed, and I'm experiencing that through a physiological response. So since I knew that there was nothing physical going on in my body, I'd been told that multiple times, I started to take another look at this idea of emotional stress. And so I looked back on my life through a different lens, and to help me do that, I'd like to introduce you to someone. And this is little me. So little me was, well, you can see, she was a great wee person. She was happy, excitable, smart, fun, but she was also very sensitive. And it seems, at least to me, she was born into the world as a sensitive soul. She was particularly sensitive to rejection. And we all want to be loved and we all want to belong. So I'm sure many of us can relate to that. But for little me, this rejection was actually painful. And actually neuroscience shows us that the pain of rejection has overlapping neural networks with physical pain. And so rejection actually hurts. And to avoid this rejection, she became the goodest girl that there ever was. She learned to please and appease, to fly under the radar. And these big emotions that she had, she learned to avoid them, to avoid that pain. And I remember actually my first memory of avoiding emotions or pushing them down was when I was on a residential trip. I'd just moved schools and I was 9 years old and I hadn't made any friends yet. And I had this horrible fear that no one would sit beside me on the bus. And as that fear turned into reality and no one sat beside me, I looked out of the window, the tears in my eyes, and I swallowed them down. And I said, Louise, don't you cry. You're absolutely fine. You don't need those people anyway. And I put on that mask of being okay. I wonder how many of you today have actually swallowed down tears before, been brave. We were allowed a letter from home, and I received a letter from my mum. It was like a lifeline. You know, someone out there loves me. I'm actually safe. But when I wrote back to her, I didn't tell her that it was a lifeline. I didn't tell her I was struggling at all. I told her I was having a great time and I'd made loads of friends. Because little me really struggled with the idea of being any kind of burden or causing anyone else to feel sad. And I wonder how many of you guys have done that, you know, pretended to be okay when you're not. It's a very human thing. I took this into adulthood with me so that when I was struggling in life, I was putting on a brave face, putting other people before myself. And when I looked back at the timeline of these symptoms, they didn't actually come out of nowhere. I was extremely stressed at work. I had just moved house and I wasn't sure I could fully afford it, so there was financial stress. And most of all, I felt trapped in a marriage in which I felt unseen, lonely, and unloved. I didn't have my hand in a fire. I was actually living in a fire. And my body, my intelligent system, was sounding the alarm. I didn't listen to my body when it whispered, and so it started to shout. So the way out for me was to learn to listen to my body, and to listen not with an attitude of fear and fixing, but rather as a close and loving friend. I learned to express and release decades of suppressed emotion. And not only did my symptoms disappear, I got back in touch with this little one. I now work professionally to help people move out of chronic pain and get back in touch with this version of themselves again. I see the power of this work every single day, but the medical system is lagging behind. After I recovered, I exchanged my wheelchair for a mountain bike. And you might have guessed by now, I don't really tend to do things by half, so I threw myself into mountain biking, and I threw myself off of a very large mountain. Amongst my many injuries was a broken spine, and I actually broke my spine in 4 places. Again, I entered the medical system. I wore a back brace for several months. I had lots of rehab. But months after the injury, when the injury had healed, I was still experiencing back pain. Knowing what I then knew about chronic pain, I was saying to my team, is this chronic pain? Has my brain learned this pain? And I was told at every turn, no, this is normal. In fact, you'll probably have back pain for the rest of your life. And something inside me when I heard that snapped, and I thought, no, I'm not having it. I've had 8 years of my life in bed with chronic symptoms. I've done my shift. I'm not willing to have a life of back pain. I got this image of my MRI scan in black and white. I could see the bones had healed. So why was I still in pain? There must be, in the absence of the physical injury, there must be something emotional going on here. And so I started to work with the trauma of the accident. I recognized shame, self-blame, anger, fear, and I got it all down onto the page. I journaled it, I released it, I ripped it up afterwards. And as this left my body, my pain reduced and disappeared. My pain was real, and my pain was not my fault. But my pain disappeared when I journaled my emotions. So how do we bring this into the medical system so that people are not being told you're going to have pain for the rest of your life, but instead there's a reason that you're still in pain, and here is something we can do together to help you get out of it. One approach is emotional awareness and expression therapy. And this is an approach which is evidence-based, and it works specifically on emotion and suppressed emotion, helping people to express and release shame, anger, fear, in a way that turns down the brain's danger response. In clinical studies, 60 to 70% of people are able to reduce their pain in a meaningful way with this approach. And that's more than traditional ways or cognitive behavioural therapy. And I'm currently in the process of piloting this in Scotland right now on the ground, and we're already seeing the life-changing difference this can make for people. And I'm not alone in doing this work. There is a whole team of practitioners, medics, patients working together to bring approaches like EAET into the mainstream medical system. Because this is about more than getting rid of chronic pain. This is about coming back to life. So I'm going to leave you with a little challenge today. The next time you feel that heat rising in your body, a little bit of anger building up, instead of swallowing it down or intellectualizing it away, because we all do that, don't we? Oh, they didn't mean it. I'm being unreasonable. The challenge I'm setting you is take yourself off into somewhere private, close the door, and indulge in a good old-fashioned tantrum. Because you never know, it might just make you feel better. My pain was real, and my pain was not my fault, but my emotions held the key.